So that was the width tool in action. I wanted to go over that tool because I'm going to use it a lot in the class, and it just kind of is a great shortcut to create a lot of different shapes and objects that would normally take a lot of time. So I'm going to take that a step further and show you another tool. So we created this using the width tool, the little shield logo, and now we want to be able to create kind of an outline. So there's one thing we could do. We can create a little simple stroke here and make that a little bit bigger. We kind of have our stroke there. But what if we wanted to create a separate object? So we wanted to have that effect but without having it be a stroke. So there's one thing we can do to make that happen, and that is path outline, offset path. So we're going to go to Object, down to Path, and it's the Offset Path option. So this is what Offset Path does. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Preview. It's going to go ahead and extend it out by a particular amount. So right now I'm set in inches, and you may be in centimeters depending on where you live, but right now this is inches. So right now it's extending outside of the original path by 0.1389 inches, and you can change that as much as you want. You can even do negative as well if you want to go inside. So if I want to do a negative, you just click on negative, and now it's going to do it on the inside, which is kind of what we'd like. So I'm going to go ahead and click on OK, and so you can see how we already made this little extra item here. I'm going to take off the stroke on here. I'm going to make this a different color, so make it a little lighter so you guys can see. So you can see how we kind of created kind of a little bit of stroke effect. And we can continue to do this forever. We can click on this lighter gray option and go to Object, Path, and go to Offset Path. And let's do once again the same distance, and let's do a negative. So it's going to go on the inside, just like that, and we're going to go ahead and make that lighter. And you can see when you do logo design how quick it is to kind of do that, because there's a lot of instances where you have kind of a shape and you want to be able to create this effect, but it's kind of a complicated shape, but it's kind of hard to redraw that on the inside. With the pen tool, we could just use this offset path tool, and it's a lot easier and it's more accurate. So the great thing about offset path is you can also work with it in typography. So you can increase and decrease the offset path to make kind of some neat shapes with the typography. And one practical way that you can use this is a lot of times when you have detailed backgrounds and you really want something, a logo to pop out in front of it, sometimes you have to use a white outline stroke around the lettering. And normally when you do this, you'd go ahead and have your typography here. I would maybe right click and I would create outlines. And then I would just add a simple stroke, and this is how you would do it if you didn't have the offset path tool. You'd increase the weight a little bit, and then you go, ooh, that doesn't look right. Then you go down to your line stroke panel, and instead of having a line stroke to center, you would then do a line stroke to the outside. So that's kind of the effect we're going for. We go to corner, maybe do a round join to make it nice and soft, just like that. But see, you can see how it's overlaying a little bit and covering up other characters in the words, and that's not really what we want to have. So this is where offset path will come in handy. So instead of adding a stroke, we're going to go ahead and null out the stroke. We're going to do the offset path, so we're going to go to Object, Path, Offset Path, and we're going to do a positive number, so we're not going to have a negative sign. We're going to do a preview, and that's a little much, so we're going to maybe cut that in half. Instead of a 0.1, we'll do a 0.05. And we're going to go ahead and preview that and see how we like it. I'm going to go ahead and click OK on that. And we are going to make it white. And we want to make sure it's a fill white. And we're going to put it in the background. And just like that, we kind of created that same effect as we did before. But this time we don't have any of the characters overlapping, and it looks like it's truly there. So we can always round the corners on this and give it a nice kind of sticker effect, kind of like the example I'm showing now. We can have a nice soft edges, and so you can kind of see where how messing around with typography can kind of have a really neat effect. I like using offset path to kind of create some really neat shapes with basic typography characters. So in this case, I'm using Azo Sans Black, and it's just a simple letter A, but I really want to make it my own letter A, something a little bit more unique. So I will need to create outlines, so I'm just going to right click, create outlines. So now I can go to Object, Path, and play around a little bit with the offset path tool to create something a little bit different. So right there I can kind of create that. I can make it a little bit bigger and click on OK, and so now I kind of have a really different shape. I'm going to ungroup this So I have my original A, and I kind of have something a little bit different. I can continue to do offset path to create something really unique and do different kind of characters. I can also continue to do this and do path, offset path. I can just do it by a smaller margin, just like that, and I can flip that to a stroke, kind of add a nice border to it. I can then take this outside one. I'm just going to continue. I'm just playing around with this tool a little bit. And I can continue and continue, and you can create really neat effects, kind of the example that you see in the J there. Kind of you can keep going and create some neat things. So several times in the class, we're going to use the offset path tool to create some unique characters and lettering, to take kind of your typical basic font and to make it something that has some character. For example, this logo that you've kind of seen in the theory lessons of the class, and kind of check that out. That's kind of how I created that, was using the offset path tool. Just another quick example of how I use offset path, and we'll be kind of doing this logo a little bit later in the class, but kind of wanted to show you how to create this little beveled look. Kind of looks a little bit more higher end, and we did that using a negative offset path. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select both of these, and I went ahead and created outlines to the type, and then I'm going to go down to Object, Path, Offset Path. I am going to do a negative one, so just going to make sure I put a negative sign in front of the number, kind of see what that looks like, and you get a little preview of it. We go ahead and click on OK, and then I can change the kind of look of that. So you could do kind of something similar to what I have above, where you're kind of changing it a little bit in color so it has that really neat beveled look. So that's exactly how I kind of came up with this one. Let me go ahead and click. And sometimes you have to ungroup when you do an offset path. So right click on group, and then you can access these little individual things, and you can change the color to get the effect above. And so we'll be doing this logo a little bit later. We'll be drawing this little neat shape. We'll actually be using several of the tools we just went over to create the hat and the horns, and try to figure out how to think of concepts for different logo designs.